Welcome to another edition of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I'm your host, Jamie Irvin, and today we are live. A couple things I wanted to talk about just before we start today's episode. One, you might hear in my voice that I've got a bit of a cold. Fortunately, I got a negative COVID test, so it's not COVID, just a regular run-of-the-mill fall cold. Today, we're not going to have a guest. We're really just previewing an upcoming episode. I wanted to talk to you about a little bit of the changes in the direction we're going with the podcast. With our live broadcast, though, we of course want you to participate. So if you have a comment or want to ask a question, we would love to have you part of today's episode as well. We this live stream is always sponsored by our podcast, the Heavy Duty Parts Report. So if you'd like to follow for free, head over to heavydutypartsreport.com. We've made some changes to the homepage there. You will be able to see all of the podcast player buttons, YouTube, TNC Radio, as well as our email subscription service, where if you just want to have a weekly email and be notified of upcoming podcast episodes, that is the best way to do it. So today, I want to preview an upcoming episode on the podcast where we're going to talk in depth about how to help customers with cooling system issues. One of the things that I heard one of my mentors, as well as a couple of the parts managers that I worked for when I was selling heavy duty parts, I would hear them say that it is so important to sell customers what they need, not just what they ask for. And nowhere is that more important than with cooling issues. So consider the scenario of where a customer walks into the parts store and maybe they've got a hose that is damaged and been leaking that needs to be replaced. Now, the parts person can identify that hose, supply them with it, and the customer leaves, job done, right? Well, not really, because there's an opportunity there to help customers to identify exactly what they need to solve the entire problem. So, one thing that parts people need to think about is taking that step back and looking at the entire situation. Now, if that truck is broken down on the side of the road, think about all the additional costs related to this hose that needs to be replaced, right? There's a driver sitting on the side of the road or maybe at a coffee shop waiting for the truck to be repaired. A mobile mechanic more than likely had to be called out, and that truck isn't delivering its load on time today. So there is a trifecta of additional costs associated with this one, hose that only costs a few dollars to replace. If you just sell that customer that hose and they go out and give it to the mobile mechanic and the mobile mechanic, goes to fix the truck, there are a bunch of other things that they may or may not have to complete the repair. If they don't have those things, it is going to cause that truck to be broken down longer, and it's going to add to the cost, right? So as a parts person, you can do a big service to the customer by asking a few appropriate questions. You're buying a hose. Do you need clamps? Do you need replacement clamps? It's a cooling issue. Do you have enough coolant to top up the system? If you've been leaking, you've probably lost coolant, right? So right there, one hose can result in, the customer asking for that cooling hose can result in a sale of two or three other parts, right? The hose, the clamps, the coolant, and it's really the parts technician who is responsible to ask these questions because they are the ones that have the knowledge. We don't want to assume that the customer has all these things covered. Now, if this truck is broken down on the side of the road, what other things might you want to ask about? Well, if there's a spill on the side of the road, maybe they need something to clean it up. In some states and provinces, that's mandated that you got to clean up your mess. So maybe there's some shop supplies that need to go with that customer. And it's not just about upselling parts, which is obviously that's in the best interest of the parts store, but it's also about providing the customer with everything they need. Now, if they've got a cooling issue, perhaps the symptom of the problem is this hose, but was it diagnosed properly? Maybe there is the need for a rad cap. a thermostat. Maybe there's some other parts that are related to this issue that need to be addressed. The last thing the customer wants is for them to come back, even if they do come back with coolant and the hose and clamps, and they give it to the mechanic, and the mechanic fix it. They start the truck and it's still overheating. So it's not leaking, but it's still overheating. Why? Maybe there's a faulty thermostat. So you can see how important it is to do this. And I know that the really experienced good parts technicians who have lots of years of experience and training, they do this instinctively. But not everybody. And even some of the more experienced ones I've seen, over time, they just kind of forget to take that extra step. So it's very, very important for parts people to be asking the right questions. What else can a parts person do to help the situation? Well, if this is a customer who has a small fleet, let's say, and they have a sales account manager assigned to them, after you supply them with all the immediate supplies to get that truck fixed and back on the road, the parts person can communicate with the salesperson and say, hey, listen, one of your accounts came in, they had a cooling issue. If they've had that cooling issue on one truck, they're probably going to have that cooling issue on several of the trucks that they own that are in that age category, that age bracket. So make sure you get out and see them. Find out what the end result was, and make sure that those components that were faulty on the one truck are inspected on the other truck so that this fleet doesn't have unscheduled downtime and another roadside repair event. I hear a lot of parts people talk. I shouldn't say parts people. I should say parts companies. The leadership groups, the managers, and the marketing all talk about how they provide great customer service. But how do you define that service? Well, what I'm talking about here is exactly the role that a parts company needs to play so that they don't just become another commodity supplier of whatever the customer asks for. They need to be those trusted advisors to help the customer to make sure that they repair, maintain, and prevent unscheduled downtime and roadside repair events to the degree possible by providing them with maintenance tips, the guidance on buying the right parts at the right time. All of this encompasses what is required to take care of your customer and provide truly good customer service. We're going to go into way more depth on this subject coming up on Monday, October 25th. A podcast episode will be dropped entitled How to Help Customers with Cooling System Issues. We're going to go into a lot more depth about which parts, what maintenance tips and recommended practices are there already established in the industry for cooling system issues. We're going to talk about how to identify parts using the Diesel Parts app. We're going to go into depth here to a much larger degree on the podcast episode. So head over to heavydutypartsreport.com today to follow the show for free, to subscribe either to a podcast player of your choice, YouTube, or just sign up to that email list and you'll get an email directly to your inbox notifying you of new episodes. And that way you won't miss this upcoming episode. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to give you more today. Like I said at the top of the show, I've got a bit of a cold. Fortunately, negative COVID test, thank God. But it's been a struggle the last couple days. So I thank you for tuning in to this preview of an upcoming episode. I appreciate it. Next week on our live interview on Friday, we are going to be talking to an expert on warranties. We're going to explore what exactly is missing in a lot of companies' warranty policies and procedures, both on the supply side and what the fleets need to do to ensure that they are managing their warranties properly. That's coming at you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to this live broadcast. And once again, just head over to heavydutypartsreport.com, sign up and subscribe to the show for free. Make sure you don't miss out on our upcoming Monday, October 25th episode, where we are going to crush the cooling system issues once and for all. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you later. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.